Well, I'll just welcome everybody here then. So I'm Nick. I kind of own this clinic. This is Ability Innovations. We do occupational therapy and physical therapy and feeding therapy and speech therapy. And so we are happy to have Melanie Brown here. Melanie Brown has been doing the Play Project since 2012. And I've watched her do amazing things with some of the kids that we work with and interacting with the parents and teaching them. So I think it's going to be a phenomenal presentation because I've seen it do amazing things myself. And so with that testimony, take it away, Melanie.
Awesome. It's good to be here, and I'm really honored that you guys are here, especially given our current climate of, pandemic and quarantine and all of that. So I'm really happy that you guys are here today. And hopefully what you'll learn today will be something that you can utilize with kids during the time that you're stuck at home, because hopefully these will be some strategies that will continue to make progress if they're missing out on other services for a couple weeks. This should hopefully keep some momentum going, or at least maintain some skills. So so just a little bit about me. So this is my crew. The two big kids are I guess I should say, so I've been married to this guy who's doing the filming for us today for 12 years, and our two oldest are twins, and they are 6, and then we have our youngest who's 21 months. And I've been given experiences with each of my children that have helped me relate to families a lot more. My oldest boy, he had some feeding issues, oral motor stuff that we had to do some work so he could move food around and chew, and so we did some work with that. My girl is feisty, and we've had some pretty challenging behaviors with her. It's way better now because of some things we've done. We've dealt with aggression with her, and so when parents talk about that, I can relate to that a little bit. And then my youngest, he is a late talker, and so we're working on some things with speech for him. So I understand the communication challenges that can happen with kids as well. So being a mom, especially with the kids I've been given, I think helps me relate to parents a little bit more. And I've been doing this for a long time. I've always loved unique individuals with special needs that have things to teach us. And I was in high school and helped with a youth group that had individuals with special needs, and really loved doing that. I got into college, and my bachelor's degree is in communicative disorders. And while I was getting my undergraduate degree, I worked in the Assert Preschool, which is an autism preschool on the Utah State campus, and really loved that. It's an ABA-based preschool. And but I will say that while I was there, I felt like there was a little bit of something missing in what I wanted to do with the kids. I had one particular child during my second year that I worked there who he was I was the lead teacher over him, and he was not making very good progress even with the intensity. He was there longer than some of these other kids, and I think there were some other issues now that I learned a lot more since I was just this dumb college student trying to figure out what to being told what to do with these kids. I think there were some things going on with him that maybe weren't being addressed outside of ABA, and I started working in early intervention with the Davis Early Intervention Program 3 days after I graduated with my degree. I'd interviewed over spring breaks and then jumped into EI right after. So that was in 2010, and started doing mostly pre-language stuff. So little kind of 18 months to 2.5 generally is the group that I worked with. and worked on like sound production and how to bring sounds into play. And then I heard about the play project and went to a couple of workshops that were held here in Utah, and I kind of fell in love with it. But there wasn't an extended training for it in Utah, so I had to fly out to Michigan, where I was able to learn from Dr. Solomon, who created the play project, and go through the intensive process of being a certified play project consultant. And I started with doing that with families in early intervention. I also, there's a private nonprofit, Easter Seals Goodwill, that was doing the play project as well, and so I had some families with them. And then went through some life transitions and left EI for a couple of years, started my business. Now I'm back in EI, and so, but I've been consistently doing the play project in that time, and I love it. It's like my thing. And I could geek out on it all day, so you probably don't want to get me started on it if you don't want to hear about it. So, I would love to hear from any of you, like, why are you here today? What kind of drew you in and motivated you to be here? Anybody want to share?
I came to support you and to help my cousin out. And who couldn't use a refresher
Yes.
from what you've been taught?
Yes,
So,
I've known Kirsten,
forever.
for a long time, since her almost 12-year-old was like a year and a half.
Yeah.
So I worked with him in EI, and then we did the play project. It was 4 or 5.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So. Yes.
Well, we do play-based therapy here, so I'm not a therapist, and so I'm kind of like the don't really know what I'm talking about person. So, but I'm the front person, so if people come in and they're like, okay, well, what's this about? Like, I want to understand play-based therapy better. So.
Yeah. Anybody else? Yes.
So I have a son, he just barely turned 4. He does not have a diagnosis of autism, but we have some similar challenges. He has a lot of social communication struggles because of his severe apraxia. And we deal with probably mild aggression, more like frustration and not being able to speak. Like his first instinct is to throw something or to get mad instead of, I don't know, more constructive ways of dealing with frustration, I guess. So where it's similar, I was interested in what you had to say.
Yeah. Those are some hard challenges. So, okay, thank you. That gives me an idea of who I'm speaking to as well. So, this is for you if you're suspecting your child might have autism, if you're pursuing a diagnosis, if you have a diagnosis, if you're looking for more ways to help a child thrive within the family dynamic. If you want to help your child in a way that's fun for you and for your child, and if you feel like your child has unique strengths and gifts and you want to really take advantage of that, and if you're driven to help your child reach his or her fullest potential, because there's some effort for parents with regard to these strategies too. And then if you just want to experience more joy and connection. So if you feel any of that, then you're in the right place today. So, all right, so the 3 steps for creating more joy. And I'll dive into these a little bit more individually. So step 1 is to meet your child in his world, and then you want to woo him out. Step 2 is to determine what their sensory needs are and use that to your advantage. And then step 3 is to make some magic. And I will talk more about that. And if you're writing stuff down now, I want to talk about the keys to success on the next slide. But the benefits of this process are like, you'll know how to bring a child out of their own world and into a place where they can be engaged and connected with other people. And it also it will help you to know how to help them regulate to decrease challenging behaviors. And then increase their ability to share attention with other people. And then, like, you can see the child communicating with you. You'll know how to play in a way that brings joy to both of you. So, and here's some keys to success. It's spending quality time with your child every day. So that doesn't necessarily look like playing all day, because parents don't have necessarily the means or the time to just play all day, although for the next couple of weeks you'll probably have a little more time to play. And whether that's just 30 minutes a day or a few hours, even working parents can implement these strategies. It's about making every minute count, even like routines. So there's just really easy ways to add joy to routines. And then you want to channel your inner child. You want to take off like your teacher hat or your parent hat and take it off and put on your kid hat. I feel like Nick's really good at this. Being a big kid. Yes. And then kids don't have an agenda when they're playing. They just want to have fun, right? And those of us as adults are like, okay, we need them to learn this, this, and this, so I'm going to play in this way to teach them exactly those things. And although that's good to keep in your mind, if that's all you're thinking about, then nobody's having any fun. So, so consider how you typically play from like the lens of this 3-step process, and then see what changes you can make. So just see what you might need to change to engage the child more. So those are kind of like the keys to success: quality time, channel your inner child, and then just kind of see what you might need to change and how you're engaging. Something to consider too is if you want some more feedback, is either having somebody do a video of you playing, or like just set up your tablet and set it on your kitchen counter and play in the family room, and that'll kind of give you an idea of what it feels like for your child when you're playing with them. It's a good reflective tool. That's something that's a big part of the play project, is using video modeling. So any questions up to this point? Okay. All right. Here we go. Okay, so our first step is we want to meet a child in his or her world. That's where we're going to meet them there to bring them out into a world of engagement and interaction. And so what we're looking for is we want to understand what they love to do and why they love to do it. And so without this, kids typically remain stuck and they're more disconnected and disengaged. So, ask yourself what your child loves to do. So just watch them, see what they do when they're left to do like whatever they want when they're not engaged with others. And so just asking these questions: what do they love to do? Or what activities are they choosing? What similarities are between the activities that they choose to do? What is it about each activity that makes them feel good? And when are they choosing to do those things? Is there something happening before that then they're choosing to do something that makes them less engaged? So what are those things that are like their comfort zone? Some examples are, and these are examples of like maybe a younger child, but you can probably think of some for your own child or children that you've seen. So opening doors or drawers repeatedly, lining things up, flipping pages of books, like proprioceptive or sensory input, so like humming or jumping or spinning, books or puzzles, letters and numbers are also a big one, screens, or like going through YouTube or needing the same section of a movie over and over again, trains or cars. Can you guys think of any others like that you've seen that are comfort zone activities?
Playing with balls.
Balls,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, jumping.
Playing with water.
Ooh, yeah, water's a big one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Climbing.
climbing.
That's a big
Yep, exactly. Okay, so like what do we do with that, right? We get that information, we find out what their comfort zone looks like, and then what do we do? So I want you to think about just being with the child. So join them in their comfort zone, and don't try to change what they're doing at first. Okay, this is not about like commanding, directing, teaching anything, okay? So, and especially for kids that are very much in their comfort zone and they don't engage well. But even kids that are fairly well at engaging, but they maybe are dysregulated, and so they're doing the comfort zone activity to try and make their world the same again. So you want to sit by them or be near them as they play. Use some language to narrate what they're doing. Oh, you're jumping so high, or oh, you're putting Buzz next to Woody and Woody next to Bo Peep if they're lining up some figures. You can imitate them. Offer them a toy, help them line things up. So that's how you join them. You don't try and change it, and that's how we start. So, any thoughts or ideas on being with? Yes.
Are you trying to just like insert yourself into their world?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Simply by just like being there?
Yes. So the goal is engagement, but if we're just trying to control it right from the get-go, then for one thing, then they're more dependent on an adult initiating the interactions for them, and they may be further dysregulated depending on, of course, the situation. So you're trying to get yourself in there, join them there before you draw them out. So this is important because, like I was just saying, they might be used to other adults coming in and be like, this is what we're gonna do. That's kind of like a lot of like therapy styles, right? So ABA, even like speech, or sometimes even occupational therapy, or feeding. Like feeding's kind of like, this is what we're doing. But by joining him, and you can incorporate this into any kind of like therapy or at-home play. By joining him, you're helping him to maintain regulation. So then they can show you their ideas, right? And then they want to be with you more, which leads to more opportunities for engagement. So I feel like the comfort zone is, lots of information, and then as you join them there, then it can lead to more. So parents who know how to meet them in their world, they learn how to read cues. They notice what the child's attending to. They figure out what their intentions are, what they want to do in play and daily routines. And then parents can hopefully avoid having an agenda, and then just enjoy being with their child, which leads to better engagement. So the next step, if you want to flip over to the second page, there might be some things you want to write down if you have a kiddo. So you want to determine sensory needs. So you just want to understand how they're taking information in through their senses. And of course, many children with autism have sensory processing disorder along with autism. And that means there's missed connections in their brain. So you want to think about how their sensory needs impact their ability to be engaged and to problem solve and like be in daily routines. So this is kind of the area that like I'm afraid now I have 2 OTs in the room that like hopefully I don't say anything like incorrect. So if I do, just jump in. Okay, so we have we're taught in school that we have 5 senses, but we actually have 7. So that's just kind of an overview of all of the different senses. And so proprioceptive and vestibular are kind of the big ones for kids with autism as far as like why they seek a lot of movement. They're looking for that deep pressure and want to, that's a big way that they regulate. Are you guys pretty familiar with this? Got some of this. Angie, are you fairly familiar with this? Somebody kind of talked about all of these senses. Because I don't want to repeat something that you guys are familiar with. It sounds like most people, like for those of you who are parents, you've worked with occupational therapists before. Okay. All right. Okay, so that's a great way to discover sensory needs, right? So if you feel like you aren't understanding what your child's needs are, great resource is your OT. But ask yourself too, in routines and in play, like how are they taking in information? When we go places, what does that look like? How are they responding to the input that they're getting? So you want to just ask yourself, what are they craving or seeking in each of these areas? What are they avoiding? Maybe they, for visual, they don't like bright lights, or maybe they really like to look at things in front of their eyes. How are they exploring their environment? How do they move? What kind of input is calming to them, and what input might be upsetting? And then how can I play with them in a way that gives them the sensory input that they need? So that's important to be asking yourself. So it's important because in order to improve their ability to play and interact, then you need to know what is going to help them stay regulated and what might be more dysregulating for them. So the right kind of input means more regulation, more engagement, and the wrong kind of input usually leads to dysregulation and avoidance. So it's also important to look at what kind of movement might be hard for them. There's sometimes kids might have a challenge with motor planning, so they can't figure out how to move their body in a way to communicate. So that's a big piece of this as well. The next part, and this is the area that I'll spend the most time on, so we want to make some magic. So this allows, and this is an acronym. So we want playtime to become child-led rather than adult-led, and which leads to more joy for both the adult and the child. So these are based on the strategies in the play project that I talk with parents about and teach them about. So the M is more. So you want to try and get more back and forth interactions. Affect, that's like your mood. So you might have heard somebody talk about a flat affect or like a high affect. So we want to make it fun so that we can follow that affect. And I'll talk more about each of these. And then G is grow. So we want to expand on and grow their interests. Ideas, we want to slow down and wait for ideas. And cues, we want to watch them and determine what do they mean, what do they want by body language, where are they looking, eye contact, those kinds of more subtle things. So I'll give you a minute to write those down. I'm going to be talking about each of these in depth. So hopefully you can start implementing them. Okay. So, more. So that is more back and forth circles is what it's referred to in amongst speechy people that are working with kids. So that's where somebody initiates something and then there's a response. That is a circle. And a lot of times kids with autism are opening and closing fewer circles than typical kids. So we want to think about stretching out the interaction. So normally, your child might be leading you over to the fridge and then maybe they put their hand on the fridge and that means they want a drink. What you want to do is stop. What do you want? And they have to touch the fridge again. Oh, let's open. Oh, so you're trying to stretch it out. So they're maybe looking at you or having to tell you again, yes, this is what I want. So instead of getting like one interaction, you get 3, 4, 5 interactions in the same space. So those are those micro circles. A really good strategy to use is playing dumb. Pretend not to know what they want. And then wait. If they can do it, expect them to do it. Or maybe you're doing something. I love this strategy in especially physical play. So you're having a lot of fun and you stop and wait and see if they will pull on you or look to you for it to keep going. So lots of pauses are really important when you're trying to stretch out interaction.
Do you find that it makes kids angry or frustrated that you're not automatically giving them what they want?
Yeah, that's a great question. So a little bit of frustration is okay, but you can also flip that so it's like funny or silly, like, oh, I forgot. So you're trying to keep the feeling relaxed, and even if you get one more circle than you got before, that's progress. So, and as they kind of figure out, oh, mom's just not going to do it the way we've been doing it, I have to work a little bit harder, then they become more confident and comfortable. And for each child it is different, right? So I have some kids that we're just trying to get more eye contact. So that's our more, is eye contact. I have some kids that they are they're using lots of language, but they're like saying it like this instead of at least saying it toward the person. Like, I didn't hear you, what did you say? And then getting them to turn, even if they're not looking, if that's hard for them. But if they're connecting, that's usually what I'm going for, is like the connection. Like, no more passiveness. You need to connect in some way, in the way that you're able to, in order to get the response you want. So, any other questions?
Yes, I'm glad Sarah mentioned that. That's one of the biggest things that we deal with my son.
Mm-hmm.
My early interventionist was always telling me to play dumb, and he was furious all the time because I wasn't doing it right.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you definitely have to scaffold it to their
Yes.
specific needs.
Uh-huh.
So I'm glad you mentioned that. So like when you interact with kids with autism and are trying to play dumb or whatever, and you see them escalating like 0 to 100 in 0.5 seconds,
Mm-hmm.
how do you kind of mitigate that
That's a good
with
question.
them?
So if I know them well enough, I might, try and give them what they want, but stretching that out. So they want their drink. I might, you really want to fly it to them. So like, it's something that they're having to stay with me in order to get what they want.
Gotcha.
It's more of that. Okay, they're going to look at me again, or they're gonna like one more time before getting what they want.
So you'll start
or-
granting them access to the thing that
Yes.
they want, but just do it slowly
Yeah.
or try and stretch
So
that out.
stretching it out, and because a little bit of frustration is okay. Total meltdown, like we've lost it. We've lost the
Right.
opportunity, right?
Right.
So, and sometimes as I'm getting to know kids, and even as parents and professionals, you might push a child too far, and that's okay because that's a learning experience. And you go, well, okay, I guess that's where our threshold is. I need to be here next time.
So what do you do when you have accidentally pushed them too far and you've lost them full on meltdown?
Mm-hmm.
Like, do you just wait out the meltdown and then continue and try again later, or?
Yeah, I like to talk about feelings a
Mhm.
lot, validate them. Oh, I didn't do what you wanted. You're so mad.
Mhm.
Like, you can be mad at me. That's okay.
Right.
And then once they're at a point where they're maybe a little bit de-escalated, some sensory input, something that's silly, being funny. Sometimes they do need like a complete break for a little bit,
Right.
and then we try again. It depends, and that's why like the sensory needs are so important.
Right.
Is because then I
Such
know, okay,
fundamental.
right now I can like pick them up and spin them around, and then we get engagement again, or like maybe we can swing in a blanket for a minute, or maybe they need to like be covered with a blanket as they like process.
And that kind of
this.
resets kids on the spectrum, right?
Yeah. Great questions. All right. Okay, so affect. And these are all they're all related to each other, so you can't really have like one without the other. So the affect is all about your mood, and so babies learn everything through the emotional experience that they have when they're learning it. So, and that's the work of Dr. Stanley Greenspan, who's done a lot of the floor time stuff, which the play project is based on floor time theory. And when it comes to, and the research that he did, babies are learning everything because of how they feel when there's a response to what they're doing. So they look at mom's face and like mom smiles back and they feel something and then they want to do it again. Or they hear mom's voice, they turn and look because they get excited about mom. With children with autism, there's somewhere this disconnect where they don't feel as strong of an emotional connection to people when they're little. And so that's where the breakdown happens, is in their learning to be with people because it just doesn't feel as good to them. And so, and one of the theories is like a motor planning thing, so they can't figure out how to respond, like turn, or how to move their body to be excited about it. There's a lot of different theories surrounding that, but it makes sense, right? So if they're not getting that same emotional payoff, then they just go with what is paying off, what the sensory input that's right in front of them. And that makes them feel good, so that's what they're going to choose to do a lot. So that's why it's really important to like figure out what they really love, and then be silly with it, have lots of fun, lots of physical play, and then like a small change. So you don't want the game, whatever you're playing, to go exactly the same way over and over again, even if the child really likes it, because you might see a lot of affect and fun right at the beginning, but it's going to start dropping. Even if they're requesting you to do that, that's when they're going into their comfort zone. So you might need to make a little change. So going even just faster or slower, like the unexpected, is really a great tool. Adding another step is something else that I encourage a lot for making little changes. So you want to watch their face. Are they looking towards you? Are they happy? Are they smiling? Especially for like lower functioning kids, as we get a little bit higher, we might see a little bit of frustration, or they're learning a skill and so they're not as, like, their eye contact decreases maybe a little bit overall, but that you can still tell that they are enjoying the time with you. So you want to woo them into that interaction. So kind of like, you have one end of a scarf in there on the other end, and you're just like gently pulling them in through making it fun. So the next one is grow. So that is being able to look at what they love to do, what their comfort zone is, and expanding on their interests. So a classic example of kids with autism is trains, and they like to line up their trains and maybe push them around the track, and that's the only thing they do. Well, we can play with trains in like 26 different ways, right? We can sing a song with it, we can hide them, we can line them up on a higher surface and knock them off and make a sound effect. So we want to play with what they love in all of the different ways, so you're getting all kinds of different interaction. And then that game can start to morph into something else, and so then you have a new game. And then also as part of this, you want to make them work a little bit. If you think they can do something, wait for them to do it. I love routines for this. So they might want to go through a routine in exactly the same way. So forgetting what comes next, or having them communicate about what happens next in the routine. Another part that I love about expanding their interests is rhythm and music. So you can talk about it in like a rhythmic way, or make up a song and sing the song to the game, or add some rhythmic stomping if it's a physical game. Another part of this is kind of getting in their way of what they really love. This technique in the play project is called playful obstruction. So you're getting in their way, but it's like gentle and really playful. So they're lining something up, and they love that train, right? But then they're letting you line it up with them, right? That's a good thing. They've let you into their comfort zone. Then you're trying to grow their interest, and you turn it the wrong way. You don't say anything, and then look at that, and then you turn it back. And then you do another one, and it's like, you do it again, and then they, want to change it back. Oopsie, I did it the wrong way. And maybe the next time you hold on to that train until they, pull on your hand for the next one. So that's kind of that playful obstruction, that kind of getting in their way. They want to open and close the door over and over, and you hold it, and it's, okay, you got it. So that's some ideas for playful obstruction, kind of getting in their way. Any questions about expanding on interests? Okay. So the next one is ideas. So like I mentioned before, children with autism are often reliant on other people to initiate what's going on. And so we may not see their ideas as frequently. And so what you're looking for when we're talking about the circles and the back and forth interaction is that there's equal amounts of adult opening circles and child opening circles. that's like our goal, and it depends on where a child is at, what we're looking for with that regard. Maybe it's just that we're getting them to close circles consistently, and then they will open a few circles, and then as they get older and more advanced, then it becomes more of this equal partnership in the play. So, but the first thing we have to do is slow down a little bit. So we have our agenda, we have what we want to do. We're like so worried about losing their engagement that we're just going fast so that they'll stay and play with us. But if we slow down a little bit and wait and watch, oh, they actually want this. I thought it was this, but they're actually doing this because it makes them, because they like how it looks, or because they like the sound of the train, or whatever it is. Just by slowing down, it makes a big difference. There's an acronym that I like. It's OWL. So observe, wait, and listen. So watch what they're doing, wait a little bit, see what they'll tell you, and also listen to what they're saying, or not saying. Listening to their body language. Body language can tell us a lot too. Don't direct or teach too much. In the play project, I talk a lot about how much to direct and teach, because if it's your idea but it's supporting their affect and their love and their fun, that's okay. But if you are, they're playing something and they're obviously enjoying it, and you're like, oh, but we need to do this, and oh, I think this would be fun, and you bring that over and you're just trying to get them to play with that, that's not following their affect. So I also like being over dramatic for kids that are a little bit higher functioning, and like, oh, but I really want that, and they might respond just by like not sure what they should do, or maybe you're trying to get them to be a little bit more flexible, and you're challenging them, even if they don't accept like what your idea is. They by kind of challenging that in that moment, it helps them be a little bit more flexible. So you want them to, I think I had an example with a kiddo the other day, and it's escaped me. Okay, so I had a little girl, we're working on pretending in a story. So we were horsies. So I was, she wanted the adults to be the horses. And so the game was going really well, and then we were saying like, oh, the horsies need water. And she said, no, go night-night. Oh, but I really, really, really want some water. And kind of like snuck over to get the water, and then no, night-night. And so then I said, okay, we'll go night-night. And so that kind of stretched her out a little bit. And then the next time, I think we shifted things, but the next time I would have been even more insistent. So like that's part of the ideas too, is as kids get older, then they're sharing and accepting other people's ideas. As they progress, it's not in their best interest to always have their ideas honored. So that's what I love about like this whole process, is we meet them where they're at, and then we go, okay, now that they've started engaging better, we're going to challenge them to do what we want some of the time.
So they figure out like, oh, actually going to get water was a fun part of the story.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Exactly. So like it's part of our story, right? Like it's not something that's completely different. And we had gotten water before, so I was going back to something that was fun, and I was just trying to add to the story. So, the last one, and this is one that I think is more like teaching at the beginning of this process, is just cues. Look at the nonverbal cues that these kids give. What are their faces saying? What is their body language saying? often their communication is poor, or they may be using language that's maybe scripted, but what are they saying with those words or those sounds? That what are they actually telling us? What is their feeling? What is their feeling life? That's what Dr. Solomon talks about. So engaging in like the right kind of physical or sensory play that matches what their cues are telling us. Using what's known as salient language, that's talking about, oh, you want to do this, so you are those cues are something that you're providing language for. Oh, you know, they're walking along a line because they like the way the line looks. Oh, yeah, that line's, you love the line, I'll walk with you. So you're talking about where their attention is. And then knowing, okay, they like the line, they like the visual, this is kind of where they're at. What else can I do to give them that same feeling that they're getting from the line? Reflecting feelings, that's similar. So like I was saying, you're so mad, you feel so angry at that I wouldn't let you do this. Or, oh yeah, you're sad, or you're happy, or you don't want brother to have your toy. So children, especially those with autism, can't process other people's feelings until they process their own. Just because you're validating a feeling for them doesn't mean you're not setting a boundary, doesn't mean you're letting them just get away with what they want. It means that they are having someone help them know what it means to feel a certain way, or that like it's okay to have feelings about that I don't want my brother to have the toy, or that I'm mad that you wouldn't let me do what I wanted. So looking, of course, at where their attention is, looking at body language, I kind of talked about those things. Any other thoughts on cues or questions? So that's one, even though we have like the magic acronym, I'm teaching cues usually first. What are they really trying to tell me?
So is the idea of pairing or kind of interpreting your child's cues through verbal language, something that they're not able to do, is the goal kind of that over time they'll realize that you say these words when they do this thing, and so they will relate that those words mean this thing? Is that kind of the idea?
Exactly. And then they're getting the language for their own feelings, and then when you're talking about other people's feelings, then they're like, oh, I felt that. I was mad and they're mad too. I know what it feels like to be mad.
Right.
So that just builds them so they can relate with other people better.
So what you were saying about this hypothetical child that likes walking on a line or whatever, so it's important for parents to know what cues their child is sending to see what kind of things they gravitate towards, so they can maybe use those things in normal life. Like if you need your child to walk into therapy, maybe you can like point out how there is a line and let's walk on the line, like that. That's how you use that or sample that.
That's one really good example.
Gotcha.
Or maybe they're listening to something, there's a certain sound or a song that they really like, or maybe it's volume, maybe they really like loud music, and that can be helpful. Other cues might be they're laying on the floor. Okay, why are they laying on the floor?
Right.
Like, what are they feeling? And or they're crawling. Okay, let's get down and crawl with them and see what are they looking at, and what is their body needing right now. So, okay, so I don't think we need to talk about this too much, but why it's important, I think we've covered that a lot. So just understanding the child's nonverbal cues. It teaches the child to show ideas and initiate interaction. It increases the child's verbal and nonverbal communication, and it also can increase imitation, You can expand on what they love to do. And parents and adults who are able to implement these strategies you'll see more engagement, and you'll see that a child is able to stay longer in playful interactions, and like it's a lot more fun. So the next thing I want to talk about is the zone of proximal development. I think that's your next page. And you can take some notes on this as you want to. So if you look in the middle, we have the comfort zone. The orange circle is the zone of proximal development, and then the yellow circle is the zone of potential development. So let's relate this to us. So we all have a comfort zone, right? So maybe having a conversation with a friend, you're in your comfort zone. Right now I would say I'm in my zone of proximal development because I'm giving this presentation. I've had to do some preparation. I have like my slides and something to help me and support me in giving this presentation. The zone of potential development would be me giving this presentation in another language. So without sufficient time, I couldn't just go give this to someone who speaks French or Spanish. So we can relate this to our kids, that they have their comfort zone and they just want to stay there, and it feels good and they're just content there. But we want to, and then they have a zone of potential development. We don't want to push them too far beyond what they can do, right? Or that's when you lose engagement. It's not fun anymore. They don't want to be with you. So we want to try and get them out of the comfort zone into the zone of proximal development. That's what they can do with support. What they can do, like while it's fun, they're learning things. It's where you're reading their cues and broadening what they're interested in. It's where you're responding to their affect and their fun, and so they're emotionally connecting with what's going on, and then they're learning. So that's, I feel like that's one of the best visuals for knowing why this model is the way it is because we want to help kids get out of their comfort zone, but not too far beyond what they are able to do. Here's a quote from Dr. Solomon, who, like I mentioned, he is the creator of the Play Project. He says, "When you do what the child loves, the child will love being with you." And then just a little bit about what I do for families, how I serve them. So there's the Play Project, which is a parent-implemented intensive early intervention program for young children. Usually it's about 7 and under with autism or suspected autism. Kids don't have to have a diagnosis in order to start the Play Project. And it's based in evidence. They did some good research that shows kids really do make progress. And it can actually be used with kids as young as a year-old who are showing signs of autism. And then something new that I'll be starting is the Magic of Play, which is a group program for parents and children, where parents learn tricks to transform interaction from frustrating to fun. And it's based on Play Project and floor time methods. And there's more information about both the Play Project and the Magic of Play on the table if you're interested. I also do sensory enrichment therapy. The company that has created the software for this and trains professionals, it's called Mendability. They train professionals, and it's done in an online platform, and I help support and coach parents through that process. And that's something that I don't do as much of. It's more of a parent-directed kind of therapy, but it's a good add-on for families who think they want something else. And then I've gotten, I hope the go ahead for a parent support group. Nick and Sarah have said that I can use the space here for a parent support group. I'm looking for like once a month or twice a month the most. And of course with our current concerns about groups, we'll have to, that's to be determined. But we'll get that figured out. And then I'm hoping down the road to figure out a way to offer like some respite care for families, even if it's, at a facility that's like a drop off or something. So I feel like that's, especially in Davis County, is like a really big need. So something that is on my radar that I feel like could support families. So, and that's why my business, it's Autism Support Services. What I do, it's supportive of families. I don't come in and do all of the therapy. Parents are learning and they get to experience the joy of having a better relationship with their child. So that's what I love about what I do, is seeing those family relationships just really improve. And then there's my contact info, and if you have any questions, you can ask me. Just something to note, if you wanted to start any service with me as a result of coming today, you'd get 10% off, and if you refer somebody, then they get 10% off, and you can earn 50% off 1 month of service. So I really trying to reach more families in what I'm doing, and so I want to have a referral program that's hopefully incentive. And I feel like not a lot of parents know, about other options, and so I want them to know that if they're looking for something else, that I can hopefully offer something that they feel good about and that supports the whole family dynamic and is really a lot of fun for them and for me. So. Any questions? Yes.
So I have a question. I'm
Sure.
sorry, I've been talking a lot.
No, it's okay.
So this may be something that I might want to just chat with you after. I'm not sure if it's the right, I don't know,
That's okay.
mode for this, but so you gave the most succinct description of autism that I've probably ever heard something that actually made sense to me. Like, so you said that the breakdown, or for kids with autism, when they're babies, they learn through emotional experiences and like connections with other people. But for kids with autism, that doesn't feel as good to them, and so they don't learn in that way. So that's where that breakdown of skills and stuff like that happens. Like, that actually makes sense to me. That's something that, because people talk a lot about kids with autism who are very intelligent, and like, well, then why is there a discrepancy in skills? I don't understand where that comes from, but that's where. So what I'm curious about, a lot of kids with autism kind of, like you said, retreat into their own world or into their own sensory realm where they're comfortable. Do they do that because like that feels equally good to all of us, but where they have the discrepancy of like emotional and other human stuff not feeling as good to them as the sensory stuff, that they kind of stay in that world? Or do sensory things feel more good to them than it does to us? Is that the sensory processing disorder? Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's
Is
like a
that too
chicken and egg
complicated?
thing, right? That's a really big question.
That's something I've just never quite understood.
Yeah. I would have to, so a lot of that theory that I've talked with families, it comes from Dr. Greenspan, who he's a very well-known child psychiatrist, written a lot of different books. He has a book called Engaging Autism, and where he talks about the floor time method. And it's been a while since I've read that part of his book, so I'll have to go back and look at that. But if that's something that you want to look at as far as that theory, he explains.
You said Dr. Greenspan?
Yeah, Stanley Greenspan. And I like his writing style. It's done in a way that like he's not talking over your head. It's
Right.
very
Very
direct, so you
accessible.
can understand it. It's a thick book,
Mhm.
but you can find what you want in there, I'm sure. And I'll have to go back and read it, but we should, we
Yeah,
can talk
I
more
am
about
so
that.
intrigued. So
Yeah.
kids that are very low functioning
Mhm.
autism versus higher functioning autism, is it just the I guess the power to which they equate good feelings with human interaction? So where that is very low, then kids just do not learn skills?
Yeah,
And that is what makes them low functioning, or?
So I think there's a few things. So if sensory needs are high, that really does get in the way of
Mhm.
interaction.
Of learning.
And if they just have a brain that's more wired for like anxiety,
Mm-hmm.
that they may just have too much anxiety over like looking at somebody. If their brain processes faces differently, there's good research that also supports that kids with autism like don't look at faces and process faces the way
The same
that
way.
we might. So
Mhm.
that's another factor. What else was I gonna say? But yeah, I have kids with high sensory needs that we are working on a lot of just
Right.
engagement, like getting them regulated so that we
Mhm.
can engage.
So that they're teachable.
Yeah. And so those are the kids that like I'm looking for, okay, what else is there? And for some of those, that's where the sensory enrichment therapy can sometimes
Mhm.
help. Or like that if they aren't already working with an occupational therapist, that I'm saying go like get an OT because we need to work on the regulation before we can get
Okay.
to the engagement.
So that's kind of where OT falls into autism, is helping with regulation so that they can be teachable.
yes.
So what might differentiate a very low functioning child versus a very high functioning child would be the amount of time they are teachable.
Yes.
Like because of sensory needs, or oh my gosh, my
And
brain
they
is
can
blown right now.
interact.
Very astute.
I have talked to so many people and no one has a good explanation. Like, well, that's just how autism is. But how? Why?
That's why I love like Dr. Greenspan's work. Is he's really one of the only people that has looked into that, into the
Mhm.
why,
Until the why.
and you know they come wired differently and maybe not feeling as good.
Mhm.
They like our bodies aren't as healthy as they were like 100 years ago,
Mhm.
and so then you have kids that are just coming differently. And
Right.
you know, maybe their guts aren't as good, and so their brains aren't working as well. And so, you know, I think a lot of it has to do with like, you know, some predisposed things.
Mhm.
And then for a parent, especially one that is just like first-time parent that doesn't know what their child's supposed to be doing,
Mhm.
and then they might miss some of that. You know, what do they do? Or a child with more medical issues, or you know,
Mhm.
they're of course not interacting as much.
For
or-
sure. So it's
So-
important to kind of parse what is
Mhm.
autism, what is their gut
Mhm.
issues, like.
Yeah, and I like looking at like that whole big
Mhm.
piece too. Is
Right.
not
Which is hard to get from professionals because they each look at one very small snippet.
yes.
And you need somebody that.
And even though like I'm
Doesn't
not everything, right?
Sure.
But I know a lot of the right people too.
Right.
And I know, okay, this is a really good resource, or like look into this. Like I'm not a nutritionist, but like think about X, Y, and Z with like
Mhm.
food, and that this may help. And
So kids who have reasonable sensory needs that aren't over the top, and you know, maybe reasonable levels of anxiety, so they're teachable more often and they're intelligent, may be able to compensate for their autism well.
Mhm.
And that's where we get the Asperger
Mhm.
crowd that
Mhm.
seems kind of awkward, but they function.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, there's more,
that's so
maybe more
interesting.
motivation for them
Sure.
to interact. Or,
So like they may feel connected to other people and feel validated or reinforced by interactions with other people, but just not to the same level as somebody without autism.
yeah.
So that they can still learn. It's just, it's slow, it's different, it's.
Yeah, and a lot of it is, there's a piece of nonverbal language that I think if that's somehow missed,
Mhm.
that makes everything go off track.
More complicated as well.
So you have kids that they just start talking, but they haven't like made really good eye contact. They're not imitating.
Mhm.
They they kind of follow a point, but it's not really great, or they don't use gestures very often.
Mhm.
And so like they pick up on the language, but because they haven't really gotten good at, okay, mom is looking here, I need to look there as
Right.
well, so that's joint attention,
Mhm.
then they miss that cue. Oh, mom's talking about this,
Right.
and when this happens, or mom makes this face that she's scared as I'm falling off, you know,
The thing,
the
right.
you know, a typical child is like, oh, mom got scared, and then I feel scared too.
Because that connection happened.
Yeah. But then you have a child who doesn't, for some reason, doesn't feel that,
Mhm.
or they aren't watching mom's face as
Right.
they're falling.
Because that connection doesn't feel good, so they don't prioritize it.
Yeah.
My mind is seriously just blown.
You know, we can like nerd out about it.
My child probably has autism.
But he's great, and that's what I love about this is I like, we want them to improve, right?
Mhm.
We want the best for, like, as a parent, you want the best for your kid, no matter how they come. And what I like about this is like, I don't want to change who they are.
Right. You just want to be able to connect
I don't,
with them.
yes.
Yeah.
But I also know that individuals with autism who are adults, they're more likely to have depression, they're more likely to commit suicide.
Mhm.
And so if we can make a difference when they're young as far as the
Mhm.
social connection, then it's easier to have the relationships. They
Right.
want to engage. They can read social cues better, and they aren't going, okay, what, I missed that. I'm depressed because I don't have friends, or like I'm in these social situations and I don't know
What's
like
going
what
on?
people are talking about.
Right.
So I think it's catching all of that when they're young.
I wonder if that's often mistaked for an auditory processing disorder, because for them it's
Mm.
like a social disconnect, whereas I could see a professional being like, you know, they're not processing correctly what they're hearing. It's so interesting.
Okay, well, thank you guys.
Thank you guys. Just in closing, thank you, Melody. Isn't that amazing? What a great resource to have too, and I'm so glad that we've made a connection here at the clinic as well. We also have these little papers that were on your seats. They have 3 questions on there, it's just kind of feedback about this seminar and things that we can learn or grow from. So please fill this out for us. And then, yeah, Melanie will probably hang out for a few minutes to answer some questions, or to be sure to sign up for if you're really interested in what else you can glean from Miss Melanie here. And thank you again.
Thank you. It's great to be here.